Free and fair elections are under attack, and today's guest is on the front lines of that fight. As chair of the DCCC, Representative Suzan DelBene is laser focused on taking back the House majority from Republicans. She and I discuss what Democrats need to do to beat Republicans at their own gerrymandering game. But first, make sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell to stay informed on how you can defend democracy. Congresswoman DelBene, welcome to Defending Democracy.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I got to jump in with the thing that everybody is talking about, which is redistricting. And it's been well reported, and we've all heard about it. Donald Trump, essentially ordered his minions to do mid-cycle redistricting, starting in Texas, but not ending in Texas. You are in charge of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which means you're in charge of retaking control of the House. No pressure. All of the future of American democracy rests on your shoulders. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but I got to ask you about redistricting and how you think things are going and what Democrats are doing to fight back.
Well, it's a great question, and I think the reason they're going down this path is because they know they can't win unless they rig the system, and there doesn't seem to be any interest on the part of Republicans to actually listen to the American people and actually change their direction and actually talk to folks about policies that will help families. Instead, they're going to blindly follow Donald Trump. And since they're not interested in listening to the people, they figure the only way they can win is to rig the system. So they're on the path of trying to do that through redistricting. You said it right, Donald. The people of Texas didn't say, hey, we have a concern about the maps. Trump said, give me 5 seats. And Republicans in Texas said, yes, sir. The people of Texas hate this. So I think it's really important to remind everyone they should be careful what they ask for. We're going to have opportunities and seats that they probably think would be safe because folks are so unhappy with what's happening. Democrats are running about 15 points ahead in special elections across the country since November of 2024. So we're going to compete in every single one of those districts. And then, of course, other states are going to respond. You're seeing what's happening in California. California said, you're actually trying to take away our voice with what's happening in Texas. And maybe another key point in what's happening in California is they're taking it to the voters and letting the voters have a say on what happens. Voters in Texas don't get a say. They're just jamming us down the throats of the people of Texas. But we have folks in California who are going to have this on the ballot, and they're going to decide.
So let me double back to Texas, because one of the points that I've made repeatedly is Texas already had gerrymandered maps. It's not like Texas started, it's not like in the 2023 cycle, the first cycle that you were the chair of the DCCC. It's not like you looked at the Texas map and you said, boy, are these fair maps? I can't believe that we have such fair maps in Texas, right? The Republicans had gerrymandered the maps already, and now they've gone back and they have done really just an absolute grotesque gerrymander. I mean, something that is like off the charts crazy. But one of the questions that I keep getting from people who are very concerned about this is there any chance that Republicans have overreached? In other words, and I think you suggest that the answer to that may be yes, that in their effort to eke out another 5 seats, they may have actually created some vulnerabilities. Is that something you think may be possible in Texas?
Absolutely. I think that in their new map, there are going to be opportunities for us. And frankly, we have great candidates who are looking to run across the country. Folks are stepping up who feel a patriotic calling to run, given all that's happening across the country. And we already have 14 Democrats who won in Trump districts in 2024. Folks were on the ballot with Donald Trump, Democrats who won in these purple districts, because people wanted independent-minded voices to represent them. And in special elections that have taken place, Democrats are running about 15 points ahead. It's a reason why someone like Elise Stefanik in New York, they actually never put her in the administration because they were worried they'd lose that seat that she had won in November of 2024 by over 20 points. So there absolutely is, anger across the country about Republican policy. Folks are angry about this big, ugly bill they passed, ripping health care away from millions of people. the tariffs, prices going up, Republicans promised to lower prices. All of these things have driven folks to use their voices at the ballot box, and people will next year as well in the midterms. And if you ask the people of Texas, they are angry. Not just Democrats angry, Republicans, the people of Texas overall angry. It's important that voters get to pick their representatives, that politicians aren't picking their voters, and Republicans are trying to take away the people's voice.
Right. And they've done it in Missouri as well, right, where they targeted the Kansas City area. And, what was interesting is covering a lot of that and reading what people are in Kansas City are saying about it. This was deeply unpopular. I mean, not on as you say, not on a partisan basis. I mean, the business community in Kansas City, the civic leadership in Kansas City is like, what the hell's happening? This is not good for the people of Missouri. And this is just, I think, another example of how, out of touch and desperate Republicans are.
Yeah, you only do this if you aren't willing to actually try to win in the court of public opinion, having your candidates go to voters and win people over. They know they can't do that. They know they're losing. And so they're trying to rig the system. And whether it's Texas or what they're looking at doing in Missouri, or they talked about doing it in Indiana and other places, all is trying to rig the system to help them win and keep a majority. But right now, the American people are angry. We're going to see that in these states across the country. But we are also going to fight back with everything we have to make sure that we are representing the American people and doing everything we can to make sure the American people's voices are heard.
All right, one final question on redistricting. So you mentioned that we may see it in Indiana, we may see it in Florida. What other states are you watching on either side where you think people should be paying attention? I've said pay attention potentially to Nebraska, where Republicans there have sort of said that they may do something. That's sort of a more complicated situation. That's actually a Republican-held seat by Don Bacon, who is retiring, and that could become a Democratic seat, but it's a competitive seat. I read recently Kansas, I guess.
Kansas
Republicans
came
are
up
now
recently
focused on.
too.
Any
Yes.
other states where you're looking at, and any states where you think Democratic governors may be looking at it?
Well, I mean, I think you kind of mentioned all the places that we've heard about the Republicans are looking at. We've also heard from governors in Illinois and Maryland who are looking at what's possible in their states. And so I think you're going to see a strong response because what they're doing in a state like Texas impacts all of our representation. It impacts the majority and who has the gavels. And so this is a critically important issue for everyone in the country, even if this redistricting is happening in particular states. And I should remind folks too, even Utah, which was kind
Right.
of a separate issue, but they have to redraw their map, and that might give us an opportunity to pick up a seat in Utah.
Yeah, in the Salt Lake City area, which used to be a Democratic district, and so again, it would be one of these closely, it wouldn't be a landslide district either way. It'd be a competitive seat, but it would be an opportunity for a Democrat to pick up a seat.
Yeah, just a great candidate who's talking about the issues that matter to people. We have a great chance to win, and that's why we've already won in tough purple districts, because we have great candidates who are focused on the issues that matter to their communities.
Okay, so speaking of, so you are from Washington State, the first congressional district, which is, for people who don't know, it involves King County, which is where Seattle is, biggest population center of the state. And one of the things that we have heard Donald Trump talk about on many occasions, right? So this is not like a one-off kind of like, oh, that's just Donald Trump musing, but he talks about regularly is targeting mail-in voting. And he recently said he might try through executive order to ban mail-in voting. Now, I assure everyone, the President of the United States doesn't have the power to ban mail-in voting. That states, not the federal government, have the right to set the time, place, and manner of voting in federal elections, subject only to congressional enactment. Congress is not going to enact a ban on mail-in voting. So in some sense, this is an idle threat. On the other hand, it is something that the President of the United States continues to say, and there are any number of unlawful actions that he, could plan that would require suing in court and the rest. As someone from a state that is quite proud of their mail-in voting, as Washington State is, I guess a couple of questions. First, why do you think he is so obsessed with mail-in voting? And second, as the head of the DCCC, that has a lot of races that sort of hinge on mail-in voting. Not just in California, where mail-in voting plays a big role. New York, mail-in voting plays a big role. States in the South, mail-in voting plays a big role. Like, how do you think about these threats from him? I'll be right back with more of my conversation with Representative DelBene in a moment. But Donald Trump is trying to rig the midterm elections for Republicans, but Democrats are fighting back. Look, our democracy is at a tipping point, but the team at Democracy Docket is growing to meet this moment. But it needs your support to help hold Donald Trump and Republicans accountable. If you want to, for just $10 a month, you can get access to exclusive events and insights from me and much, much more. Become a premium member now by clicking on the link in the description below.
Well, I think he's trying to disenfranchise voters. He's trying to make it harder for people to vote. The reason vote by mail has been so important is we've done everything possible to make it as convenient as possible for folks to cast their ballots. And we want to make sure that every legally eligible voter has their ballot counted. And so making it easier for folks to vote, be able to vote from home, not have to go to a polling place or wait in line, increases participation, make sure that people can vote and work it into their lives, and making sure that when we do that, we increase participation, make sure people's voices are heard. That's why it's been important, and I think that's why other states look at it. And of course, we have folks like our military who are serving, who are voting by mail because they're away from home, and making sure that they can vote is important. And I think the president's actions, his announcements and proclamations and what he's kind of looked at doing in executive orders would disenfranchise our military and their ability to vote as well. So I think he feels if he can make it harder for folks to vote, that maybe that's going to help him. Whatever it is, it's scary that he's trying to kind of get this, permeate this fear across the country, make people concerned about their ability to vote. We're going to fight that. We're going to continue to fight that. And we look at it. We look at that, what we can do from a legislative standpoint to make sure we're doing everything we can legally in terms of legal battles here, because people know that when they're able to cast their ballot, work it into their day, that makes them either, we know, participation increase. And again, making sure that every legally eligible voter's ballot is counted is critical to making sure voices are heard across the country.
So I always have to ask this whenever I have members of Congress on. What do your Republican counterparts make of all this? Like, are they just totally brainwashed that they're like, oh yes, stripping healthcare from people who need it and giving tax breaks to millionaires, great idea. Doing away with mail-in voting, love it. Destroying separation of powers, all for it. Like, what I mean? Like, are the Republicans in Congress, like, are they on the program with him? Do they privately disagree, but they're like too afraid to say something? Are they just spineless? Like, what is it that do you think the Republicans in the House are doing?
Well, it's a great question because I don't know why you want to be a member of Congress if you're not willing to stand up and represent your communities. And we are a co-equal branch of government, so it's important for us to stand up and do our job as legislators, but also as folks who provide oversight over the executive branch. And yet Republicans have kind of relinquished all of their authority. They are unwilling to ask even simple questions of the administration. And folks have changed their position in many cases. We've had Republicans who talked a big game about how important it was for any decisions on trade and tariffs need to come before Congress, which they do. But now they're silent. When there's someone else in the White House, they were okay saying that that was important. Now they're silent. So there's a profound lack of courage if you're not willing to stand up for your community and stand up and do and kind of stand up for the oath that you took as a member of Congress, then maybe it's time to find another job. But unfortunately, we have a lot of Republicans who might have questions about what's happening, but are unwilling to stand up. There might be some who are just fine with what's happening. Either way, it ends up the same place. They are blindly loyal to Donald Trump. They are unwilling to stand up and provide congressional oversight of the administration. And that's a big reason why they're going to lose the majority in the House in 2026.
So I've talked to a number of, like I said, your colleagues. I've talked to a handful of senators about this. I had Raphael Warnock, senator from Georgia, on recently, and he was saying that the devastation to rural hospitals, for example, in his state as a result of these cuts. And the question I always ask, is I assume that that a lot of the people who are negatively impacted, by the way, for example, by those cuts, are in red districts, right? Like when you say they're
Yes.
voting against their communities, I mean, the Republicans are literally voting against their communities, right? Because this is not one of those things like the SALT tax where they could say, well, it's really hurting Democratic states, but not Republican states, right? These are hurting their own voters.
Absolutely. We have, some of the districts with the highest percentage of people covered with healthcare coverage through Medicaid are in Republican districts. David Valadao in California has one of the highest percentage of population who've been getting healthcare coverage through Medicaid, and yet he's gone along with these huge, massive cuts to Medicaid that are going to impact his community. You even saw kind of the ultimate in cynicism when you see someone like Senator Josh Hawley vote for a bill that slashes Medicaid, and then a few weeks later say, well, we really need to restore Medicaid. That bill passed by one vote. He could have been the vote to stop that, and yet he wasn't willing to stand up when he could have. He complains about it later, but that's not very helpful for the people who are going to lose health care. And we also see premiums spiking for next year. Healthcare costs are going to go up. This is having an impact right away on communities across the country. I know in our state that premiums on the exchange are going to go up 21% next
Wow.
year. And if the premium tax credits aren't renewed, that people have been used to lower their premiums for folks who are buying on the exchange, folks are going to see premiums go up by 65% next year. That's one of the things we're fighting for right now is healthcare, because this isn't something that's years away. This is something that's happening to our communities right now. And to your point, in communities in every part of the country, rural, urban, millions of people losing healthcare for no reason. And maybe the last point that is important for folks to remember is healthcare coverage. Also, when we provide that and we help support people to have coverage, it actually saves us all money. When people are healthier and doing better, our communities do better, we save money. But when people are sicker and our ER and our emergency rooms are overwhelmed with uncompensated care, it's going to cost everyone more. And we're seeing the beginnings of that in these premium increases for next year.
All right. So turning to politics, uh, you took what is one of the most important but thankless jobs in all of American politics. Uh, in 2023, you became the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. For people who don't know, the DCCC, as it goes by, is the committee that is responsible for electing Democrats to the House of Representatives. If you want to support helping elect a Democratic majority, literally that is what the DCCC does. It is part of the National Democratic Party, but it is like singularly focused. It is, its entire mission is to elect Democrats to the House. So you took this
Yes.
on as a pretty thankless job, a very hard job in a presidential cycle. And notwithstanding what we saw at the top of the ticket and the disappointing results for president, you had actually a good night on election night in 2024. The DCCC overperformed relative to the national environment and the presidential, and won some critical races. And so I assumed that you would be like, okay, I did my job. I gave it the office. I'm now going to, return to just having one full-time job, being a member of Congress from Washington State. But instead, you signed up for a second cycle. And so talk us through that. Talk why, why do this? Why put yourself out there as the person with all of the pressure, going into 2026? And I'm sure your Republican colleagues, they're no big fans of yours because you're trying to beat them. Why? What was your thinking? I know you're going to say it was delusion, but what was your thought process to saying, you know what, I'm going to do this again for 2026 and finish this job?
I came to Congress to make a difference for my communities, to make sure kids had incredible opportunities. I felt like people made investments that helped me to be in the position I am today, despite struggles that my family had. And uh, and the only way I can do work to help our communities is if we have a Congress that's functional, that has leadership who actually wants to help the American people, help working families, help our kids have a great future. And so there's nothing more important than taking back the majority in the House. We just talked about the fact that we have Republicans who are blindly loyal to Donald Trump, who are unwilling to stand up. The only way I can do work that I think is important and that we can collectively do work is important is if we have a check on this administration. And frankly, we have leaders who care about standing up for the American people. So the first way we can get there is by taking back the majority in the House. We only need 3 more seats to get there. And the House is very much a majority-driven body. When you have the gavels, then you can move legislation, have hearings, do oversight as is critically important. All of those things are important to achieving the goals and for me to do the work that I came to Congress to do to give kids a great future. So there's nothing more important I can be doing, than making sure that we take back the majority. I wish there were Congress was working and we were able to work in a bipartisan fashion to move things forward. That's not the world we're in right now. We have Republicans blindly loyal who seem uninterested in doing anything but Donald Trump told them to do, and huge damage being done to our communities. It's easy to break things. It's hard to put them back together again. So it's the utmost priority. We absolutely can take back the majority. We need to take back the majority. And I want to make sure I'm investing my time doing what's most important. And doing this is the most important thing at this moment.
So it is, and it is for an additional reason. And I'm sure you will agree, but I'll give you a chance to react. I have said that these are going to be the most important midterms of my lifetime. That the difference between an authoritarian regime, the difference between Donald Trump trampling the rule of law, the difference between Donald Trump being able to ignore congressional enactments, being able to ignore the Constitution, being able to have a cabinet full of sycophants who have no accountability, that retaking the House is the thing that can halt the slide of democracy. And I know there's a lot of debate about whether democracy issues are the most important issues to voters versus health care versus cost. But I think for a lot of people, even if they care most about those other things, the slide in democracy is really, really important. And what we are watching right now is a government that is supposed to have checks and balances, has none, because Mike Johnson and his Republican cronies won't do anything to protect their prerogatives. And so a Democratic Congress would enable that vital check, at least for the final 2 years of Donald Trump's term. And I wonder if you feel that pressure or if you get that sentiment about democracy issues as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is, we talked about voting rights. I was born in Selma, Alabama, where
Hmm.
people fought for voting rights. I have a picture right next to me here of John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr. crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This is what folks stood up for to make a difference in our country, to stand up for our communities. And we have to do our part to do that right now. It absolutely is about our democracy, the future of our country, standing up for all communities across our country, our Constitution. And to do that, we've got to have leaders who are willing to respect the oath that they took, respect how important it is for us to have the checks and balances put in place in our government that were put there for good reason. And So we got to elect people who care about that. We've got to elect people who are going to stand up for our communities, who have the courage to stand up, even when it's hard, to do what's right for the American people. And so, for all those reasons, because the only way we get, as I said, the only way we get to a place where we are actually able to do the work of the American people is if we have new leaders. Republicans have shown that they aren't listening to the voices of the American people. They are just going to do whatever Donald Trump told them to do. And that's not the way our system's supposed to work, but that's not the way the American people want it to work too. And so the American people across the country agree. Folks want costs to be lowered. They want to make sure that we have a bright future. They want folks to be a check on this president and to actually question what's happening, to do the oversight, the basic work. That's something, and that's not a partisan statement either. When you talk to people, Republicans even want Republicans to act as a co-equal branch of government. So there's nothing more important right now. Um, and it's going to be up to the American people to make that happen. And I think we're hearing from folks across the country who are dismayed, who are scared about the direction we're in. But we've seen great people like John Lewis, who stood up before. We absolutely can do our part now to make a difference and to put us on a strong path going forward. But it's going to mean all of us doing our part. And a big part of that is being engaged and involved and to remember the incredible opportunity, kind of the sacred right we have to vote.
All right. So one of the things that drives me crazy, this is like my personal thing, and anyone who follows me on Democracy Docket knows that I talk about this all the time, is that there is a desire among much of the legacy media to act as if there is something called a moderate Republican. Okay. I look at the House conference of Republicans and I don't see a single moderate, not one. You talk about John Lewis, Congress put forward, Democrats, when they were in the majority, put forward the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It got 0 votes among Republicans in the House, not one. Okay, this is a bill, not only did every Democrat vote for it, this is a bill that in prior years had nearly unanimous support among Democrats and Republicans. When it came up for a vote in 2006, it was supported by everyone in Congress except 33 members. And now not a single Republican voted for it. When the Freedom to Vote Act came up, this was the bill that would have dealt more broadly with voting issues, including, by the way, banning partisan gerrymandering. Again, a Democratic bill, but one in which Democrats were willing to work with Republicans. I mean, I saw it firsthand. I saw Democrats say, hey, Republicans, work with us on this. Find things that you like, find things you don't like. I mean, in the Senate, they worked, Democrats had to work with Joe Manchin, who's a Democrat, but had to work with him to make some changes. Not a single Republican voted for the Freedom to Vote Act in the House of Representatives, not one. And I could go on and on about this. The most recent, you look at the most recent economic legislation. The Republicans are just in lockstep. So this myth of a moderate Republican in the House, I fear, is going to be the downfall of American democracy. I am from originally Rockland County, New York. Every time I hear Mike Lawler described as a moderate, I want to I ask, what moderate on what? On what? Where has Mike Lawler not followed the dictates and the wishes of Mike Johnson and Donald Trump? So talk to me about the challenge that you have of making people understand that they are all MAGA. Like they're all MAGA. They're some of them are more proud MAGA, some of them are more scared MAGA, but they're all MAGA Republicans. And what is that? Do you get frustrated by this like I do? Do you see it as an opportunity to win elections? Do you feel like people get it, or that there's a communication need here to get more people to understand that this Republican that is pretending to be moderate is really just more of the same?
No, I agree. I don't think there are any moderates left, definitely not in the House. And I just tell folks, look at their voting record.
Right.
Why not what folks say, but how do they actually vote? Because in the end, they fall in line every time, fall in line with the most extreme policies from this administration, refuse to stand up, do basic oversight. If you think that slashing important jobs, for example, the Veterans Administration, important work they do, then Bring folks in, let them testify, let folks from the administration testify. If you think they're doing a great job, then why are we scared to have hearings and do oversight? Tariffs, which Congress is supposed to vote on.
Yeah.
If you think it's a great job, then vote on it. But Republicans have done everything possible to avoid taking a vote. They don't want to stand up. They want to hide away. They don't want to vote and use their voices. So I think anyone who used to be a moderate Republican who spoke up but got pushed out of the party. You saw what happened to a Liz Cheney or an Adam Kinzinger. Some folks retired and just kind of quietly left and didn't want to be part of uh, uh, be members of Congress anymore, or kind of part of the direction that they saw their party going. But there's been no courage to stand up anymore. There isn't that interest to kind of be an independent thinker and to work across the aisle to do important legislation to move our country forward. That's where we're at today. And I think it's very important for the people of American people to remember that. And we will continue to hold Republicans accountable for what they actually do and for the votes they are taking and for the actions they're taking right now to try to rig the system because they know they're losing. So all of those things I think are going to be an important part of the election. But holding Republicans accountable for what that policies that they're putting in place or what they're allowing the administration to do is absolutely incredibly important for folks to understand as we head into 2026.
So one of the things that has shown the Republican hypocrisy almost as well as anything else in a way that everyday Americans can understand is the Epstein files. I mean, this was a movement that told us that we needed to release the Epstein files. These Republican members of Congress campaigned on the idea that they needed to release the Epstein files. Now, all of a sudden, they don't even know what the Epstein files are. They act like and I noticed at first they were like, well, there are Democrats in the Epstein files, and Democrats were like, okay, release the Epstein files. Well, there could be a lot of Democrats. Oh, Democrats are like, okay, release the Epstein files. Like they keep trying different ways to say, well, we shouldn't release the Epstein files. But it looks like Mike Johnson may now have a problem. As I understand it, the numbers on the discharge petition are either very close or going to go over. Do you think we will see that happen, where the Epstein files will be released? Do you think Mike Johnson will, pull some magic trick out to continue it? We know Donald Trump doesn't want anything to come out of the Epstein files. I'll leave it for people to speculate why that might be. But what's the latest on that?
Well, we have a special election that will add one more Democrat because we had an open seat because our colleague Raul Grijalva passed away. So, a special election happening in Arizona that will give us one more vote. And literally, to make sure discharge position goes through, you need a certain number of signatures. So, one more signature can make all the difference in terms of, once again, just bringing legislation to the floor to force people to vote. That's what we're asking is, if you want to stand up against something, then be willing to stand up and vote against it. But Republicans are trying to avoid having to say anything about this issue. They don't want to vote on it, so they're trying to push it away. But a discharge petition, which is kind of a way of forcing a vote onto the floor, absolutely could happen with enough signatures. And we have one more that's going to be coming here soon. And I don't know what Republicans are going to do, because then they might actually have uh, to take a vote and to show where they really stand, not just kind of try to talk and wiggle their around it, but show the way they really stand. And to your point, release the files. It's
Yep.
simple. Just release the files.
Okay, let's talk about some specific races. Obviously, we can't talk about every race in the country, but if people are interested in the House map, how should they think about it? Do you think about it by geography? Do you think about it by certain kinds of members holding seats that Kamala Harris won or that Joe Biden won? Like, what's the way for people who are really interested in this issue to think about the map and your goals to take the majority? Because after all, we're interested in the map, but we're really interested in taking control of the majority.
Yeah, so we have 35 seats across the country where we're on offense, 35 places where we think we have opportunities to flip seats. And of course, as Any changes in maps that might end up happening can impact that and change exactly where those districts are. But those districts that we look at are a little bit of everything you brought up. There, some of these are districts. We have 3 districts that Kamala Harris won, where a Republican won. Folks like in Omaha, in Nebraska, where we have an open seat right now. That would be an opportunity to pick up. We have seats that voted for Joe Biden in 2020, voted for Donald Trump in 2024, have been kind of swing districts, a bunch of opportunities there. We have races that were just incredibly close last cycle. And given everything that people have seen happening across the country, means we have great opportunity there. So we have races in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, even opportunities in Kentucky and
Hmm.
Tennessee. Not always places that people think of, but and given what has happened across the country with the frustration people have with what they've seen happen with this administration and Republicans in Congress, I think that increases the opportunities we have. So we have great candidates. We have who are focused on the needs of their communities. The number one issue we see across the country is rising costs. Um, Trump promised to lower costs on day one. He's done anything but food, housing, healthcare, childcare, energy costs, all going up. And this administration has made it worth with their policies, with tariffs, with the chaos that has happened and impact across has had an impact across our country. Been more and more of a struggle. So those are opportunities for us. Those have been districts we're looking at, and we're going to continue to see great candidates step up and have opportunities, probably in even more places as people continue to sour on what they see coming from this administration. They hate the this big ugly bill, and Republicans' answer isn't to do better policy; it's to try to figure out a new name for the bill. So that
Yeah,
kind of
which is
shows you where
amazing,
they're
right?
at.
I mean, first they spent all of this time bragging about the name. Now they are doing everything they can to distance themselves from the name. It tells you something about where their
It's
politics
still
are. I want to make
the
sure.
ugly bill is still an ugly bill.
Yeah, exactly. I want to make sure by omission you don't omit New York and New Jersey. I can think of enough seats in just those 2 states to flip the majority.
Yes, did a lot in New York even last cycle. New York and California were big places, but yeah, there are many other places across the country. So please don't omit New York and New Jersey. But those are opportunities for us. We have opportunities all over the country, and we have great candidates signing up to run. So. We put our list up on our website, dCCC.org. You can see all of our districts in play all across the country.
And then how do things look in terms of there must be some seats that you are defending. So how do you feel about the folks who won a lot? They're incumbent members. It'll be a good year for Democrats. I'll say this. You don't have to. I think this could be one of these years where no Democratic incumbent loses. But how do you feel? Are those shaping up like they are doing the building blocks necessary to run effective campaigns?
Yeah, we have 26 Democrats who ran in tight districts. We call them our frontliners. They're the ones with the toughest reelections across the country. They're doing an incredible job standing up for community. I said we have 14 Democrats who won in Trump districts. 14 of those 26 won in Trump districts. And really, these are folks who are standing up for their communities. When you have folks who are independent minded, willing to speak out for their communities, people see that, and that puts them in a strong place to be reelected. Republicans are going to spend a lot of money trying to target these incumbents who are running for reelection. And so we're going to make sure we continue to support them in the work that they're doing, making sure their voices are heard, fighting mis and disinformation that's out there. So yeah, we can't add by subtracting. We've got to keep the folks we have, add on top of that. And history is also on our side. When you have a trifecta like they do, the House, the Senate, and the White House, and you're doing damage to our communities, history says you lose in an election, but even more so now, given what people see is happening. Like you said, what's happening in terms of fighting for our rights and our freedoms, but what's happening in terms of the day to day pocketbook issues that people are struggling with and have been made worse by this administration.
And when the dust settles, what is the margin right now so that people can see just how close this is?
We only need 3
When I
more
say just the
seats.
dust settles, in other words, so that people understand what I'm saying, there are always some number of vacancies because someone retires or someone passes
Yeah, so
away or
we
there's a
have
special
one,
election.
we have a special election happening right now, which will fill, then we'll have one more vacancy in Texas, where our colleague Sylvester Turner passed away. We will there's an election in November to fill that. Then we will be back up at 215. We need 218 to take back the majority. So we need 3 more seats to be in the majority. They have a microscopic majority. The American people are with us. We have great candidates running. um, we're going to fight these battles all across the country on redistricting, the attacks they have on voting rights, the tax they're making on campaign finance. Uh, um, we're going to fight all of these battles, but we're going to win because the American people are with us.
Yeah, and so I want everyone who's watching to to bring this home. They need only 3 seats. Okay, this is out of 435. They need only 3 seats, and they are recruiting great candidates. They are on offense. They are fighting really, really hard. I mean, I can tell you the DCCC is fighting as hard as anyone in court right now for voting rights and for free and fair elections. I can say that firsthand, and they have all of the momentum of history. So this is the committee that, if you believe as I do that the future of American democracy hinges on retaking the House in 2026, this is the committee that needs your support. So we'll put a link to the DCCC in the show notes where you can donate and also where you can see that map for yourself. But it is truly razor thin. I mean, 3 seats. I mean, like I said, I can name 3 seats just from where I grew up, which was in New York on the New York-New Jersey border, which is why I picked that. But you could pick any other states. You could pick 3 seats, in the Southwest. You could pick 3 seats in the West, in the Mountain West, 3 seats in the South, right? Like this is the chance for Democrats to do this, and the Congresswoman works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for you to make sure that there is that she is doing everything she can, fighting hard to protect democracy and protect your rights. So we need to do what we can to support them. So, Congresswoman, I got to ask you sort of a final question. So, and this may be putting on your local congresswoman hat. So you, I am sure, are familiar with the fact that a lot of people are really scared. They are terrified about what they see happening to our country. They see their health care being torn away from them. They see in the streets that their neighbors, that their people who are part of their community are being disappeared, to God knows where. I had Congresswoman McIver on from New Jersey who got indicted. I've had her on a couple of times. An absolute outrage, an absolute outrage. This is a congresswoman from New Jersey, done everything that she's supposed to do, was doing oversight, which is her obligation as a member of Congress, got indicted. We saw a U.S. senator in California thrown to the ground. Uh, you know, uh, Senator Padilla. Several of your colleagues have gotten threats of one form or another from the Department of Justice or from Donald Trump himself. And so there's just a lot of fear about about where we are. And that fear can bridge into hopelessness and despair. And so I always tell people, Donald Trump wants you to be hopeless. He wants you to think there's nothing you can do, right? He wants you to give up, and that people can't give up. They have to continue to stand up and fight back in the way that they can peacefully in their communities. But you're a member of Congress, so you undoubtedly, as you go about your business, people come up to you and they feel paralyzed by it all, and they feel hopeless. What do you tell the person in your district who's your constituent who says, Congresswoman, you're a powerful Congresswoman. I'm just a storekeeper, or I manage a local business, or I work in a tech company. I feel like there's nothing I can do. What do you tell them?
I tell them that public sentiment is a powerful, powerful thing. That when we come together, when we speak out and speak up, amazing things can happen. We were talking about Selma earlier. We had people across the country who had no sense that they would be successful, but they knew they weren't going to see change unless they stood up for change, and they had the courage to do that. And it's important that we all do. I know folks say, I'm just turning things off. I don't want to watch what's going on anymore. And I say, I understand, but we should watch. We should be aware of what's going on, and we should speak out and come together and make sure that we are standing up for our rights and our freedoms for our neighbors, for our families, for the policies we care about. He absolutely means that people need to remember how important it is that they cast their ballot. We have, you know, elections coming up in November across the country. Every race matters, every election matters. But it's also important for us to have those conversations with our neighbors, build those bridges. Because as Abraham Lincoln said, with public sentiment, almost anything is possible. Without it, almost nothing. And he said that during a very, very tumultuous time in our country. So I know it's a difficult time, but do not feel powerless. There's a lot of power in people coming together, speaking up, standing up, and sharing stories, because sharing stories highlights what's happening on the ground, helps it go from wonky policy to people understanding the impact the administration has had in our communities, the damage they've done to our communities. All of that puts us on a path going forward. If we stand up, we speak out, and we stand together. So I know folks are doing that. We need to continue to do that. And again, it's important that everybody remember to make sure they cast their ballot in elections across the country.
Congresswoman Suzan DelBene, you are a hero for democracy. You are someone who is on the front lines. You are not taking the easy road, you're taking the hard road by fighting for a Democratic majority in Congress in 2026. You didn't have to do this. You were encouraged. I know everybody, myself included, was like, please do this again. But you didn't have to do this, but you chose to do this for your country and for future generations. And we all owe you an incredible debt of gratitude. And thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.